The ritual breaks her. Kara feels her bones settle into a permanent, fragile human state as her golden wolf spirit fades from her mind, whispering a final, "I love you," before vanishing into Randy's chest. Randy gasps awake, his eyes flashing with a power greater than he ever had, supercharged by Kara's sacrifice. He looks at Kara. She is trembling, pale, gray-skinned, and utterly silent because the connection to the pack mind is gone. She reaches for him, needing comfort for the agony she just endured. Randy sniffs the air, sneers in disgust, and pulls away. He doesn't see a savior, he sees a hollow. His wolf, now roaring with borrowed power, rejects the emptiness inside her. "You smell like nothing," Randy says, his voice cold. "A Luna must be strong. You are too weak to stand beside me now." He exiles her from the pack house to the servants' quarters in that very moment, while she is still bleeding from the ritual runes. The cold stone floor pressed against Kara's cheek when consciousness dragged her back to a world she no longer recognized. Every muscle in her body screamed, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the void that opened in her chest when she reached for Orlia. "Orlia." Silence answered. Not the comfortable quiet of a sleeping wolf, but the devastating absence of something that had been part of her since birth. Kara's breath hitched as she pressed her palm against her sternum, feeling for the familiar warmth, the golden presence that had always hummed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. Nothing. She sat up too quickly, and the room spun. The space was barely larger than a closet, rough wooden walls, a thin pallet on the floor, a single window so grimy she could barely see through it. This wasn't her bedroom. This wasn't the Luna's suite with its silk sheets and windows overlooking the forest. This was the servants' quarters, buried deep in the underbelly of the pack house where she'd only visited once to bring supplies during the winter storms. Why am I here? The memories crashed over her like ice water. Randy's body, cold and gray, the black veins of nightshade venom spreading across his chest. The ceremonial knife slicing through her palms. The rite of transfer, written in ancient text she'd found in the forbidden section of the archives. Orlia's voice, so soft and sad, "I love you, be brave." And then Randy's eyes opening, blazing with power that wasn't his own. "You smell like nothing." Kara's hands trembled as she reached for the pack mind, that constant background chorus of thoughts and emotions that connected every wolf in the territory. She'd been taught to filter it as a child, to find her own voice among the symphony. Now she listened desperately, straining to hear even a whisper. Nothing. The silence was so complete it felt like being buried alive. The door scraped open without warning. An older woman with steel-gray hair stepped inside, her nose wrinkling as though she'd walked into something foul. Kara recognized her, Marta, head of the household staff. They'd had tea together once, when Kara was still planning the spring festival. "Up," Marta said, her voice flat. She tossed a bundle of fabric onto the pallet. "Get dressed. The kitchens need extra hands." Kara stared at the bundle. Not fabric rags. Rough, stained cloth that wouldn't have been fit for cleaning, let alone wearing. "Marta, there's been some mistake. I need to speak with Randy." "Alpha Randy," Marta corrected sharply. "And you'll speak to him when he summons you. If he summons you, now get dressed, Omega." The word hit like a slap. Omega. The lowest rank in the pack hierarchy, reserved for those too weak to fight, too damaged to shift, or too broken to contribute. Kara had never been an Omega. She'd been born Beta class, elevated to Luna when Randy chose her as his mate. "I'm not," Kara started, but Marta was already turning away. "The Alpha's orders were explicit. You're to be treated as the lowest Omega until he decides otherwise. Be grateful he didn't exile you completely." The door slammed shut, and Kara heard the scrape of a bolt sliding home. Locked in. She looked down at the rags, then at her own body. The ritual robes she'd worn were gone, replaced by a thin nightgown that barely covered her. The cuts on her palms where she'd carved the runes had scabbed over, leaving angry red lines across her lifelines. Her skin, which had always held a warm, sun-kissed glow, looked pale, almost gray. Kara dressed mechanically, her mind elsewhere. How could this be happening? She'd saved him. She'd given up everything, her wolf, her connection to the pack, her very soul, to bring him back from death's door. And this was her reward, exile to the servants' quarters, treatment as an omega. He loved me, she thought desperately. He promised me forever. The memories surfaced unbidden. 3 years ago, when she'd been nothing but a low-ranking beta helping patrol the eastern border. The rogue attack had come without warning, 7 wolves against 3. Kara's patrol partner had fallen within seconds, and she'd been cornered near the ravine. Then Randy had appeared, a force of nature, tearing through the rogues with savage efficiency. But one had gotten behind him, claws raised for a killing blow. Kara hadn't thought. She'd shifted and lunged, taking the blow meant for him. The rogue's claws had ripped through her shoulder, but she'd given Randy the opening he needed to finish the fight. He'd carried her to the pack hospital himself, refusing to let anyone else touch her. He'd stayed by her bedside for 3 days while she healed. And when she'd finally opened her eyes, he'd smiled at her like she was the sun breaking through storm clouds. "You saved my life," he'd said, brushing hair from her forehead with surprisingly gentle fingers. "I'm going to spend the rest of mine making sure you never regret it." 6 months later, he'd claimed her as his mate. A year after that, she'd become Luna. The pack had celebrated for a week straight. Randy had held her hand through every ceremony, every ritual, his wolf singing to hers through the pack bond. "You're mine," he'd whispered on their mating night, his forehead pressed to hers. "Forever, Kara, nothing will ever change that." Forever had lasted exactly 2 years. Footsteps echoed in the hallway above, the main floor, where the Alpha's quarters occupied half the second story. Kara pressed her ear to the door, trying to catch any sound, any hint of what was happening in the world she'd been cast out of. Laughter drifted down, feminine, musical, smug, Soria vain. "How does it feel, Alpha?" Soria's voice was saccharine sweet, dripping with false innocence. "To finally have real power." Randy's response was muffled, but his tone was warm. Pleased. The sound of it carved something vital out of Kara's chest. "Like I could tear down mountains," Randy said, clearer now. They must have moved closer to the servants' stairwell. "I've never felt anything like this. It's like my wolf has been sleeping my entire life, and now he's finally awake." Soria purred. "Maybe you needed a stronger mate to unlock your potential, someone who wouldn't drain you with weakness." A pause. Kara held her breath, pressing harder against the door. "Maybe," Randy agreed, and the casual way he said it, like he was discussing the weather, like he hadn't just dismissed the woman who'd sacrificed her soul for him, made something inside Kara crack. "She'll be dealt with soon enough," Soria continued. "The pack can't have a hollow contaminating the territory. It's only a matter of time before the council demands she be removed entirely." "Let them demand." Randy's voice was cold now, authoritative. "I'll handle Kara when I'm ready. Right now, I have more important things to focus on, like the alliance with the northern packs. They'll be much more interested in negotiating with an alpha of my caliber." They moved away, their voices fading into the upper halls. Kara slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor, her arms wrapped around her knees. The rags she wore smelled of lye and sweat. Her body ached. Her soul felt hollowed out, scraped clean of everything that had made her who she was. And somewhere deep in that emptiness, beneath the grief and shock and disbelief, something else stirred. Something small and hard and cold. It whispered a single word, over and over, in rhythm with her broken heart. "Survive." Marta appeared at dawn with a bucket and brush, dropping them at Kara's feet without ceremony. "Alpha's chambers need cleaning. The new Luna will be moving in fully by week's end." The words landed like physical blows. New Luna, week's end. As if Kara had never existed at all, as if their mating bond had been nothing more than a transaction that could be voided with a signature. "I can't," Kara whispered, her voice raw from a night spent crying silently into her thin blanket. "Please, anything else." "The kitchens, the stables, I'll scrub every floor in the pack house. Just not." It wasn't a request. Marta's expression held no sympathy, only the cold efficiency of someone following orders. "He specifically asked for you, Said you'd know where everything needs to be perfect. Of course he did. Randy always had been thorough when it came to cruelty, though Kara was only now realizing it. All those times he'd corrected her in front of the pack, laughing it off as helping her improve. The way he dismissed her suggestions during council meetings, then implemented the same ideas weeks later as his own. She'd called it confidence, strength, the natural dominance of an alpha. She'd been so blind. The walk up the servants' stairs felt like climbing toward her own execution. Each step brought back memories she desperately wanted to forget. Randy carrying her over the threshold after their mating ceremony, both of them laughing. Late nights planning pack strategy while tangled in silk sheets. The morning he'd kissed her awake and told her she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. All lies, or worse, truths that had simply stopped mattering. The Alpha's chambers were exactly as she'd left them 3 nights ago, except for one glaring difference. The ritual circle was still carved into the wooden floor near the bed, the grooves dark with dried blood. Her blood. The ceremonial knife lay where it had fallen, forgotten in the chaos of Randy's awakening. But scattered around the room like territorial markers were Sorya's belongings. Silk scarves draped over the mirror, expensive perfume bottles lined up on Kara's vanity, a riding cloak hanging where Kara's Luna ceremonial robes should have been. Kara's hands shook as she filled the bucket from the basin. She started with the blood, scrubbing at the ritual circle on her hands and knees. The grooves were deep, carved with desperate precision when she'd thought getting the symbols perfect was the difference between life and death for Randy. How careful she'd been, how focused, even as Aurelia had whimpered in her mind, sensing what was coming. "Are you sure?" Aurelia had asked, her golden presence flickering with fear. "There are other ways. We could search for another cure, we could." "There's no time," Kara had whispered, tears streaming down her face as she worked. "He'll be dead by morning. I can't lose him, Aurelia, I can't." "Then I suppose you can't lose me either," Aurelia had said softly, sadly, and had pressed herself forward, ready for the sacrifice. Now Kara scrubbed at the evidence of that sacrifice with a rag that smelled of mildew, trying to erase the moment that had destroyed her life. The blood was stubborn, clinging to the wood grain like it knew it was all she had left of her old self. A sound from the doorway made her freeze. She looked up, heart hammering, terrified Randy had come to watch her humiliation. But the corridor was empty, just shadows playing tricks. Still, she worked faster, needing to be done, needing to escape this room full of ghosts. She found more traces of the ritual as she cleaned. A strand of her hair caught in the ritual knife's handle. The candles she'd lit, now melted to nubs. And on the bed, their bed, a single golden thread from her Luna robes glinting in the morning light. Sorya's nightgown was laid out on the pillow where Kara's head used to rest. Something inside Kara went very still and very cold. She picked up the nightgown, silk and expensive, chosen specifically to replace her. For a long moment, she stared at it, this symbol of her erasure. Then she carefully folded it and placed it in the trunk at the foot of the bed, her movements precise and emotionless. If she let herself feel, she would shatter. And she couldn't afford to shatter. Not yet, not here. By the time she finished, the room looked pristine. No trace of blood, no evidence of the ritual that had saved an Alpha's life at the cost of his Luna's soul. Perfect for Randy's new beginning with his new mate. Kara took one last look at the room where she'd thought she'd spend her life, then walked out without looking back. That night, sleep came hard and unwelcome. The servants' quarters were never quiet, pipes clanging, mice skittering in the walls, the sounds of other low-ranking wolves moving through the corridors. But eventually, exhaustion dragged Kara under, into dreams that felt more like drowning. The figure appeared without warning, standing at the foot of her pallet. Impossibly tall, dressed in robes that seemed woven from mist and starlight. His features were beautiful and terrible, sharp cheekbones, a cruel mouth, and eyes that held no color at all, just endless, fathomless depth. He looked at her the way someone might examine an interesting insect pinned to a board. "Finally," he said, his voice resonating in frequencies that made her bones ache. "I was beginning to wonder if the shock had broken your mind completely." Kara tried to move, to speak, to scream, but her body was frozen, paralyzed by something that felt like gravity multiplied 1,000 times. "Don't bother fighting it," the figure continued, moving closer with steps that made no sound. "This is a dream. Well, mostly a dream. The lines blur when you're hollow. You're standing in doorways now, little broken thing. Doorways most wolves never even see." "Who are you?" The words scraped out of Kara's throat like broken glass. "Names are such limiting things." He tilted his head, studying her with those terrible, colorless eyes. "But you may call me the Pale Keeper. I keep things that others have lost. Memories, souls, futures that might have been." He smiled, revealing teeth too white, too sharp. "Wolves that have been sacrificed to save unworthy alphas." Kara's paralysis broke with a surge of desperate hope. "Orlia, you have Orlia." "I have what remains of her, yes. Screaming inside your precious alpha's chest, being slowly corrupted by the poison you thought you cured." The Pale Keeper crouched beside her pallet, his face inches from hers. "The rite of transfer doesn't cure nightshade venom, child. It merely postpones the inevitable while providing the victim with a burst of stolen power. Your wolf is dying slowly, in agony, trapped in a body that was never meant to hold her." The words hit like hammer blows. No, the ritual was supposed to save him. I researched it, I followed every instruction." "You followed instructions written by fools who didn't understand what they'd found." The Pale Keeper's voice was almost gentle now, which somehow made it worse. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to offer you a choice." He gestured, and suddenly Kara could see herself, really see herself. Not her body on the pallet, but her essence, her spirit. Where Orlia's golden light should have been burning bright, there was only emptiness. A hollow space inside her chest, dark and waiting. "The empty cup can be filled with poison or wine," the Pale Keeper said, his colorless eyes boring into hers. "Choose wisely, little hollow, because what you pour into that void will define what you become. Victim or victor, broken or transformed, dead or dangerous." "I don't understand," Kara whispered. "You will." He stood, his form already beginning to dissolve into the shadows. "The question is whether you'll understand in time to save what matters, or whether you'll waste your second chance trying to win back a man who was never worthy of your first." "Wait," Kara lunged forward, but her hands passed through nothing but air. "How do I save Orlia? How do I?" "Figure it out," the Pale Keeper's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Or don't. Either way, I'll be watching. You've become quite interesting, little hollow." Kara jolted awake, gasping, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. The servants' quarters were dark and silent. Just a dream. It had to be just a dream, a nightmare born from grief and trauma and... Something tickled her cheek. She reached up and found it. A single feather, long as her forearm, the color of moonlight on water. Silver and ethereal and impossible. Real. Kara clutched the feather to her chest and stared at the ceiling, listening to the mice in the walls and the distant sound of the pack waking above her. The empty space where Orlia should have been ached like a missing limb. But somewhere in that emptiness, something new was stirring. Something that had heard the Pale Keeper's words and was considering them very, very carefully. "Choose wisely, little hollow." In the darkness, Kara smiled for the first time since Randy had rejected her. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just realized that having nothing left to lose meant having everything to gain. The kitchen duty rotation placed Kara on breakfast prep with 3 other wolves she'd never bothered to learn the names of when she'd been Luna. The irony wasn't lost on her, as she stood elbow-deep in dishwater beside a scarred man who moved with the careful deliberation of someone whose body had been broken and poorly healed. "You're doing it wrong," he said quietly, not unkindly. "Marta likes the plates stacked by size, not by type. She'll make you redo the whole thing if she catches it." Kara looked at the haphazard pile she'd created and felt heat crawl up her neck. A week ago, she'd been planning state dinners and negotiating trade agreements. Now she couldn't even wash dishes correctly. "Thank you," she managed, starting to reorganize. The man studied her with dark eyes that held too much understanding. "Marcus," he offered. I've been on kitchen duty for 2 years, ever since I lost my challenge fight with the beta and my wolf decided he'd had enough of losing. Kara's hands stilled in the water. She'd heard of wolves losing their animal spirits through trauma or defeat, but she'd never met one. Never wanted to. It had seemed like bad luck, like their misfortune might be contagious. The thought made her sick now. "I'm sorry," she said and meant it. "Don't be. I'm alive, aren't I? That's more than most can say after challenging someone 2 ranks above them." Marcus handed her another plate. "Besides, being hollow isn't the worst thing in the world. You learn to see things other wolves miss when you're not constantly hearing the pack mind screaming in your head." Before Kara could respond, a woman's voice cut through the kitchen clatter. "Marcus, stop corrupting the new girl with your depressing philosophy. She's traumatized enough." The speaker was perhaps 40, with gray-streaked auburn hair pulled into a practical braid and hands that moved with the efficiency of someone who'd spent decades in service. But her eyes were sharp, assessing, and when she looked at Kara, there was recognition there. Not of who Kara had been, but of what she'd become. "Alara," the woman introduced herself, not offering a hand. "Widow of Garrett, who died holding the northern border against a rogue incursion 5 years ago. The pack promised me honor. They gave me kitchen work and a monthly stipend that barely covers bread." She said it without bitterness, just stating facts. "You're the Luna who gave up her wolf to save the alpha, then got tossed aside like garbage. We've heard the stories." "They're not stories," Kara said, her voice rougher than she intended. "They're my life." "Not anymore, they're not." A third voice joined them, younger male, with an uncertain waver that marked him as barely past his first shift. Except when Kara looked at him properly, she realized he probably wasn't past his first shift at all. His eyes held the trapped desperation of someone caught between 2 forms, never quite one or the other. "Finn," Marcus said gently, "did you finish with the pantry inventory?" "Yes, and I came to warn you. The alpha's in a mood. He threw Beta James through a wall this morning during training. James is in the infirmary with 3 broken ribs and a fractured skull." The kitchen went quiet. Even the other servants stopped their work, listening. "That's the 3rd incident this week," Alara said, her voice low. "Last week it was 4, the week before 6. His power surges keep getting worse." Kara's heart hammered against her ribs. What kind of surges? Marcus and Alara exchanged glances. Finn shifted nervously from foot to foot, his body flickering slightly, a partial shift he couldn't control. Finally, Marcus spoke. "His wolf is too strong, like there are 2 spirits fighting for control instead of one. During the full moon run last week, he nearly killed Theo for getting too close during the hunt. Said Theo's scent was wrong, threatening. Theo's been his best friend since childhood." "And his temper," Finn added, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "It's like walking on knives around him. One moment he's fine, the next he's—" The boy trailed off, his eyes haunted. "Violent," Alara finished bluntly. "The council's noticed, the pack's noticed, but no one says anything because he's also stronger than he's ever been. Faster, more powerful. And Sorya's been at his side, telling everyone it's just growing pains, that he's ascending to his true potential." Sorya, of course. Kara's fingers tightened on the plate she was holding, and she had to consciously loosen her grip before it shattered. "She's been saying other things too," Marcus continued carefully. "Spreading rumors that you used dark magic on him, that the ritual you performed wasn't a sacrifice but a curse, that you're trying to destroy him from the inside." The plate did crack then, a thin fracture running down the center. Kara stared at it, watching her distorted reflection split in 2. "That's insane. I saved his life." "Did you?" Alara's question was sharp. "Because from where we're standing, it looks like you did something to him, and whatever it was, it's eating him alive." "I gave him my wolf." Kara's voice rose, and several heads turned their way. She lowered it to a harsh whisper. "I gave him Oralia. The ritual was supposed to transfer her life force to jumpstart his heart. It should have cured him." "Then why is he getting worse?" Finn asked, his young face creased with genuine confusion. "Because the Pale Keeper had told her the truth that none of the ancient texts had mentioned. The rite of transfer didn't cure nightshade venom. It only postponed it. And Oralia was trapped inside Randy, being slowly corrupted, her golden light turning black with poison. But Kara couldn't say that. Couldn't explain about the silver feather hidden under her palate or the entity that visited her dreams with colorless eyes and impossible knowledge. I don't know, she lied, but I need to speak to the council. If he's getting worse, they need to know the truth about what happened. Bad idea, Marcus said immediately. The council's already turned against you. Sorya's made sure of that. I don't care. I won't let her spread lies about. Kara, Alara's hand on her arm was firm. You're not Luna anymore. You're not even Pack anymore, not really. You're hollow. They won't listen to you. Then I'll make them listen. She was out of the kitchen before any of them could stop her, moving through the servants' corridors toward the main hall where the council held their sessions. Her heart pounded, but for the first time since waking up in that cramped room, she felt purpose burning in her chest. If Randy was in danger, if Oralia was suffering, she had to do something. Had to try. The council chamber doors were open, voices drifting out. Kara recognized them. Elder Miriam, Beta James, apparently recovered enough to attend, the head of Border Patrol and several ranking pack members. And Randy's voice, deeper than she remembered, rougher. She stepped into the doorway. I need to speak with the council. The room went silent. Every face turned toward her, expressions ranging from shock to disgust to something that looked almost like pity. Randy stood at the head of the table, and the sight of him stole her breath. He looked magnificent. Power radiated from him in waves, his eyes brighter, his presence commanding in a way it never had been before. Oralia's power looked good on him. Until she met his eyes and saw the gold flash there. Her gold, Oralia's gold. And beneath it something else, something wrong. You dare enter this chamber, Beta James snarled, half rising from his chair despite the bandages wrapped around his ribs. You, who cursed our alpha with your dark magic. I didn't curse him. I saved his life with the rite of transfer, and now something's wrong. His power is unstable because... Enough! Randy's voice cut through her words like a blade. He moved forward, and Kara instinctively stepped back. There was something in his movements now, a predatory grace that made her prey instincts scream. You have no right to speak here. Hollows have no voice in pack matters. I'm trying to help you, Kara said desperately. Randy, please just listen. The ritual. The ritual that you performed without permission, without consulting the healers or the council. Elder Miriam's voice was cold. The ritual that came from forbidden texts and dark magic. It wasn't dark magic. It was an ancient rite, a sacrifice of... Randy was suddenly in front of her, moving faster than should have been possible. His hand closed around her throat, not squeezing, just holding, just reminding her how easily he could break her now. His eyes were blazing gold, and this close, Kara could hear it. A whimper, faint and desperate and achingly familiar. Oralia. You will not speak of that night again, Randy said, his voice vibrating with power. You will not spread lies about dark magic or curses. You will accept what you are, a hollow, an omega, nothing, and you will be grateful I let you remain in pack territory at all. The gold in his eyes flickered, and for just a moment, Kara saw something else. Fear, pain, as if somewhere deep inside, the Randy she'd loved was still there, screaming to get out. Then it was gone, buried under Oralia's corrupted power, and whatever darkness was growing in him. He released her and Kara stumbled back, gasping. The council watched in silence. No one defended her. No one spoke. Get out, Randy said quietly. And if you ever enter this chamber again without permission, I will exile you from pack lands entirely. Kara fled, shame and rage burning in equal measure. Behind her, she heard Sorya's musical laugh, heard her say something about the cursed one finally knowing her place. But louder than that, clearer than anything else, was the sound of Oralia whimpering inside Randy's chest. Trapped, suffering, slowly dying in the body of the man Kara had sacrificed everything to save. Marcus, Alara, and Finn were waiting in the corridor. They didn't say anything, just fell into step beside her as she walked back toward the servants' quarters. In the silence, Kara made a decision. If the pack wouldn't help her, if Randy wouldn't listen, then she would find another way. The Pale Keeper had told her the empty cup could be filled with poison or wine. She was beginning to understand which one she needed. The screaming started just after midnight. Kara bolted upright on her pallet, her heart hammering as the sound echoed through the pack house, raw, animal, full of agony. Around her, other servants stirred, but no one moved toward the sound. They knew better than to interfere in alpha business. But Kara recognized that scream. She'd heard it before, in the moments after Randy had taken his first breath with Orlia's power burning in his veins. She was halfway to the door before Marcus caught her arm. "Don't. Whatever's happening up there, it's not for us to see." "He's in pain," Kara whispered, hatting herself for still caring. "He's always in pain now." Marcus's grip was firm. "And he'd sooner kill you than accept help from a hollow. You know that." The screaming stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of breaking furniture. Then silence, thick and oppressive. Kara sank back onto her pallet, her hands shaking. She could still hear Orlia's whimper from the council chamber, could still see that flash of gold in Randy's eyes that wasn't quite right. Something was wrong. Something was getting worse. And she was the only one who knew the truth. By morning, word had spread through the pack. The Alpha was leading a hunt at dawn. Mandatory attendance for all warriors, voluntary for everyone else. A show of strength, Beta James announced, to prove the pack's unity and their Alpha's power. Kara watched from the kitchen windows as the hunting party assembled. Randy stood at the center, magnificent in his authority, his body radiating the kind of power that made other wolves instinctively bow their heads. Soria was at his side, dressed in riding leathers that hugged her curves, playing the part of Luna-in-waiting with practiced ease. "He's going to hurt someone today," Alara said quietly, coming to stand beside Kara. "You can see it in the way he's holding himself, too rigid, too controlled, like he's fighting something." "Fighting what?" "Whatever you put inside him." The words stung, even though Kara knew Alara didn't mean them cruelly. To the pack, she was the curse, the dark magic user who'd corrupted their Alpha. No one wanted to believe that she'd acted out of love, that she'd sacrificed everything trying to save him. The hunting party shifted and disappeared into the forest. Kara tried to focus on her work, but her hands moved mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She kept seeing Randy's face in the council chamber, kept hearing Orlia's whimper. The hunting party returned just before noon. They came back missing one warrior, and carrying another who wasn't quite dead yet. Kara heard the commotion from the kitchen, shouting, the healer being summoned, Beta James's voice raised in barely controlled panic. She shouldn't have gone to look. Should have stayed in her place, kept her head down, remembered what Randy had threatened. But she went anyway. The courtyard was chaos. Warriors clustered in tight groups, their faces pale with shock. The injured wolf, Thomas, she remembered his name was Thomas, he had 3 children, lay on a stretcher, his throat torn open, black veins spreading from the wound like cracks in porcelain. The healer worked frantically, but even from a distance, Kara could see it was hopeless. Randy stood apart from everyone, his back to the pack, his shoulders heaving. Soria was trying to approach him, her hand outstretched, but he snarled at her, actually snarled, and she backed away, her expression flickering between fear and calculation. "What happened?" Kara asked a young warrior standing near the edge of the crowd. He looked at her and there was accusation in his eyes. The Alpha lost control during the hunt. Thomas got too close to his kill and the Alpha, he swallowed hard. It was like he didn't recognize him, like Thomas was prey instead of pack. By the time we pulled him off, Thomas's throat was. The warrior didn't finish. He didn't have to. Thomas stopped breathing a moment later, and the healer sat back with a defeated shake of her head. The pack went very, very quiet. Randy turned slowly, and Kara's breath caught. His eyes were pure gold, no trace of his natural brown. Blood covered his mouth and chin, and his expression, there was nothing human in it. Nothing of the man she'd loved, just hunger and power and something wild that couldn't be contained. He challenged me, Randy said, his voice rough and wrong. He got too close. He stopped, confusion flickering across his face, then horror. Thomas. The body lay between them, accusation made flesh. Soria moved forward carefully, like approaching a rabid dog. My Alpha, you were defending your kill. It's instinct. Natural dominance. Thomas should have known better than to. I killed him, Randy's voice cracked. I killed Thomas. He has children. He was. His hands were shaking, covered in blood. What's happening to me? No one answered. The pack watched their Alpha fall apart, and no one knew what to say. That night, Soria called an emergency council meeting. Kara heard about it from Finn, who'd been serving refreshments in the chamber. She says the Alpha needs to complete the Luna bond immediately, that he's unstable because he doesn't have a proper mate connection to ground him. That's not how it works, Kara said, but her voice was hollow. She knew exactly why Randy was unstable, and it had nothing to do with mate bonds. The council agreed. The bonding ceremony is set for the next blood moon, 2 weeks from now. Finn's young face was troubled. They think it'll fix him. It wouldn't. The Luna bond might mask the symptoms temporarily, might give Randy something else to focus on, but it wouldn't cure the void corruption slowly devouring Orlaya's spirit inside him. Nothing would, unless Kara could figure out how. Which was why she found herself creeping through the pack house at 3 a.m, moving through shadows toward the archive library. The lock on the door was simple. She'd had the key once when she was Luna. That key was gone now, confiscated with everything else. But Marcus had taught her a trick with a bent piece of wire, and the lock clicked open after only 2 tries. The archives smelled of old paper and dust. Moonlight filtered through high windows, casting everything in silver. Kara moved quickly to the forbidden section, to the shelves she'd raided when searching for a way to save Randy. The rite of transfer text was still there, the pages she'd studied now marked with dried blood, hers, from when she'd cut her palms to perform the ritual. But there had been other texts that night. Other books she'd dismissed as irrelevant, focused only on finding a cure. Now she pulled them down, searching for anything about nightshade venom, about ancient enemies, about the consequences of the ritual she'd performed. Hours passed. The moon moved across the sky, and slowly, horribly, the truth emerged from scattered references and half-burned pages. Nightshade venom wasn't a poison. It was a weapon, created by something called the void corruption, an ancient force that fed on spiritual energy. The venom didn't kill its victims. It hollowed them out, creating empty vessels the corruption could inhabit. And the rite of transfer, that desperate sacrifice Kara had made, was never meant as a cure. It was meant as a delay. By pouring Orlaya into Randy, Kara had given the void corruption exactly what it wanted, a powerful wolf spirit to corrupt and consume. Orlaya wasn't keeping Randy alive. She was being slowly devoured, and when she was gone completely, the corruption would take full control. Randy would become something worse than dead. Kara's hands shook as she read the final passage. The only cure is to remove the corrupted spirit before the void takes root. But to do so will kill the host, as their body has become dependent on the borrowed power. A no-win situation. If Kara saved Orlaya, Randy died. If she left things as they were, the corruption consumed them both and created a monster. She was so focused on the text that she almost missed it. A small leather journal tucked behind the larger tomes, its cover worn smooth by handling. Kara pulled it out, opened it, and froze. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. The first entry was dated 28 years ago. I dreamed of the Pale One again tonight. He stands at the foot of my bed, neither man nor spirit, and tells me the child I carry is special. That he will be powerful beyond measure, if only I'm brave enough to accept the gift he offers. Jonathan thinks I'm mad when I speak of these visions. Perhaps I am, but the Pale One feels more real than anything else in my life. Kara turned pages with numb fingers. The entries continued, documenting a pregnancy haunted by visits from an entity that promised power, demanded faith, warned of prices yet to be paid. The final entry was writ the day Randy was born. He came to me one last time, the Pale One. He held my son, my beautiful, perfect son, and said, he is mine and not mine, raised by wolves but born of something older. When the time comes, he will understand. I should be terrified. I should tell Jonathan, should flee with our child to somewhere safe. But when I look at Randy, all I feel is love. Perhaps that will be enough. Perhaps love can protect him from whatever bargain I've made. Or perhaps the Pale One was right, and some debts are inherited whether we want them or not. The journal slipped from Kara's hands and hit the floor with a thud that seemed impossibly loud in the silent archives. Randy's mother had dreamed of the Pale Keeper, had made some kind of deal with him, and Randy was the result, half blood, half something else, powerful and cursed in equal measure. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture Kara didn't want to see. She gathered the texts and journal, tucking them under her arm. Dawn was coming, and she needed to get back before anyone noticed her absence. But as she turned to leave, moonlight caught on something carved into the wall behind the forbidden shelves. A symbol, a spiral within a circle, the same pattern that had been part of the ritual runes she'd carved into the floor. And beneath it, scratched in what looked like dried blood, the Pale Keeper takes what he's owed. Kara ran. Kara made it back to her quarters just as the first servants began stirring. She shoved the stolen texts under her pallet, her heart still racing from the discovery in the archives. Randy's mother had known the Pale Keeper, had made some kind of bargain with him, which meant everything, Randy's power, his corruption, maybe even Kara's own sacrifice, had been orchestrated from the beginning. She lay down and closed her eyes, trying to calm her breathing. She needed to think, to plan, to figure out what to do with this information. But exhaustion dragged at her, and despite the adrenaline still singing through her veins, she felt herself slipping toward sleep. The transition was seamless. One moment she was lying on her pallet in the servants' quarters, the next she was standing in a place that shouldn't exist. The sky was twilight purple, stuck between day and night. The ground beneath her feet was solid but translucent, like walking on frozen smoke. In the distance, she could see the pack house, but it was wrong, twisted, the walls breathing, the windows like eyes. Everything felt thin here, stretched, as if reality was a membrane that might tear at any moment. "Welcome," a familiar voice said, "to the space between." The Pale Keeper stood before her, no longer confined to dreams or visions. He was solid now, real, towering over her with his impossible height and colorless eyes. His robes shifted like living mist, and when he moved, the air around him rippled. "This isn't a dream," Kara said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "No, you're far enough into Hollow now that you can walk the liminal spaces without losing yourself. Most wolves who lose their spirits go mad within weeks. But you," he circled her slowly, assessing, "you're remarkably resilient. I chose well." "Chose," the word came out sharp. "You chose me." "Of course. Did you think it was coincidence that the forbidden texts were exactly where you'd find them? That the rite of transfer was described in just enough detail to be tempting, but not enough to warn you of the consequences?" The Pale Keeper smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible. "I've been arranging pieces on this board since before you were born, Little Hollow. Your sacrifice was always the point." Rage surged through Kara, hot and clarifying. "You did this. You poisoned Randy, you manipulated me into performing the ritual, you destroyed my life." "I gave you an opportunity." His voice cut through her anger like a blade through silk. "You were wasting yourself on a half-blood alpha who never appreciated what he had, playing Luna to a man who would have discarded you eventually anyway. I simply accelerated the timeline." "He was dying." "He was meant to die." The Pale Keeper stopped in front of her, his colorless eyes boring into hers. "The nightshade venom was always going to kill him. The void corruption has been hunting my bloodline for centuries, and Randy was its latest target. But you," he reached out, his fingers not quite touching her cheek, "you offered something far more interesting, a sacrifice pure enough to delay the inevitable and powerful enough to prove you worthy of my true gift." "I don't want your gifts," Kara said through clenched teeth. "I want Orelaya back. I want my wolf, my life, my—" "Look." The Pale Keeper gestured, and the world shifted. Suddenly Kara could see through the translucent ground, down into the pack house, into Randy's chambers where he slept fitfully. But that wasn't what made her gasp. Inside Randy's chest, visible only in this liminal space, was Aurelia. Her wolf spirit was barely recognizable. Where she'd once been golden light and fierce joy, now she was dimmed, flickering. Black veins crawled across her form like cracks in porcelain, spreading from her heart outward. She was curled into herself, trembling, and even without sound Kara could tell she was in agony. "Aurelia," Kara whispered, dropping to her knees. She reached toward the vision, knowing it was useless but unable to stop herself. "No, no, please." Aurelia's eyes opened, golden and familiar and full of pain. She looked directly at Kara and her mouth moved. Not words, but a plea, a desperate, silent begging. "Help me." "The void corruption feeds on spiritual energy," the Pale Keeper said, his voice almost clinical now. "Your wolf is being consumed slowly, her essence converted into fuel for the darkness. In a few weeks, maybe a month, there will be nothing left of her. And when she's gone, the corruption will have full control of Randy's body. He'll become a hollow puppet for something ancient and hungry." The vision faded. Kara found herself back in the purple twilight, tears streaming down her face. "Save her, please, I'll do anything." "Now we're getting somewhere." The Pale Keeper crouched beside her, bringing his terrible, beautiful face level with hers. "Let me tell you a story, Little Hollow. 28 years ago, I met a she-wolf named Lydia. She was kind, brave, and utterly unsuited to be the mate of a weak alpha. So I offered her a bargain. Give me one night, and her son would be born with the potential for greatness." Kara's breath caught. "You're Randy's father." "In the biological sense, yes, though I prefer to think of myself as his architect. I gave him the capacity for immense power, but power without purpose is just destruction. I needed to know if he could be molded into something useful. He couldn't." The Pale Keeper's expression was utterly without emotion. "But you passed every test I set. You sacrificed everything for someone unworthy. You survived being hollow when most would have gone mad. You found the archives, deciphered the truth, and you're still standing here instead of breaking. What do you want from me?" "To be my vessel." He said it simply, as if offering her tea. "My bloodline with Lydia created a half-breed, but what I really need is someone willing to carry my full power. Someone hollow, with space inside them to contain something older than the moon goddess herself. Become that vessel, Kara, and I'll give you the strength to save Aurelia, destroy the void corruption, and reshape the pack into what it should be." "And if I refuse?" "Then Aurelia dies screaming. Randy becomes a monster. And the void corruption spreads through the pack mind like a plague. Within 6 months, everyone you've ever known will be dead or corrupted. The pack will fall. The territory will become a wasteland." He stood, towering over her again. "But you'll be alive, hollow and powerless but alive, free to start over somewhere else if you're fast enough." Kara pushed herself to her feet, her legs shaking. "You're asking me to give up my autonomy, to let you use my body as a weapon. I'm offering you power beyond anything a mortal wolf could comprehend. By making me your puppet, your vessel." She laughed, and it came out bitter and sharp. "I just escaped being defined by Randy. Why would I agree to be defined by you?" For the first time, something like surprise flickered across the Pale Keeper's face. "You're refusing." "I'm refusing to be used again." Kara met his colorless eyes without flinching. "There has to be another way. A way that doesn't require me to hand over what's left of myself to another powerful male who thinks he knows what's best for me." The Pale Keeper stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Not the cruel, calculating smile from before, but something that might have been genuine respect. "You continue to surprise me, Little Hollow. Most wolves in your position would leap at the chance for power, regardless of the cost. But you—" He circled her again, and this time there was something different in his movements. Consideration. "You want autonomy, control over your own destiny, to save what you love without becoming someone else's tool." "Yes." "Then I'll offer you an alternative, though I warn you, this path is far more dangerous than simply accepting my gift." The Pale Keeper stopped in front of her, and the purple twilight around them began to shift, showing glimpses of other places. A silver pool surrounded by standing stones, ancient trees with roots that glowed. Seek the Moonwell. It's a sacred place, older than the Pax, where the barriers between worlds are thinnest. There, if you're strong enough, you can learn to weaponize your hollow state. Weaponize it how? Being hollow means you're empty, a void where a wolf spirit should be. But voids are powerful things. They pull, they consume, they absorb. Learn to control that pull, and you can draw power from the world itself. Learn to direct it, and you can extract corrupted spirits from unwilling hosts. His smile widened. Learn to master it, and you can destroy ancient evils that have plagued this world for millennia. Why would you tell me this? If I become powerful on my own terms, I won't need you. Exactly. The Pale Keeper's expression was unreadable. Perhaps I'm tired of creating puppets. Perhaps I'm curious to see what you'll become if given true freedom. Or perhaps... He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Perhaps I know that the path I'm sending you down will break you in ways that accepting my gift never would. Either way, you'll be interesting to watch. The twilight world began to dissolve, reality bleeding back in at the edges. Kara could feel herself being pulled back toward her body, toward the waking world. Wait, she called out. Where is the Moonwell? How do I find it? Head north from Pack territory, past the rogue lands, into the deep forest where wolves fear to tread. You'll know it when you see it. The Pale Keeper's form was fading, becoming transparent. But Kara, you should hurry. The blood moon is in 2 weeks. If Randy completes the Luna bond with Soria before you can save Aurelia, the corruption will have another spirit to feed on. And once it has 2 wolves to consume, nothing will stop it. Kara opened her eyes in the servants' quarters, gasping. Gray dawn light filtered through the grimy window. Her body ached as if she'd actually been standing in that liminal space, and when she looked down, she found dirt under her fingernails. Impossible, since she'd never left her pallet. But tucked into her palm, pressed into her skin like a brand, was a map. Not drawn with ink, but burned there with silver light, showing a path north through territories she'd never seen. The Moonwell was real. The path forward was real. And Kara had exactly 2 weeks to learn how to weaponize the hollow inside her before everything she'd sacrificed for became irredeemable. She pulled the stolen texts from under her pallet and began to read, planning her escape. Marcus found her in the kitchen 2 days later, his expression grim. Soria knows you've been in the archives. She's convinced the council you're gathering materials for darker magic. They're voting tonight on whether to exile you permanently or execute you for treason. Kara's hands stilled in the dishwater. When? Sunset, maybe sooner if Soria pushes hard enough. He glanced around, making sure they were alone. You need to leave, now. I can't just walk out. The borders are patrolled, and without a wolf, I can't outrun. We know. Alara appeared from the pantry, her face set with determination. Which is why we're coming with you. Well, part of the way at least. Kara stared at them. You'd risk exile for me. Why? Because we're tired of watching good people get destroyed by bad alphas, Marcus said simply. And because if even half of what you told us about Randy's corruption is true, this pack is doomed anyway. Better to help you try to fix it than sit here waiting to die. They moved fast. Finn created a distraction in the main hall, a staged accident involving a cart of wine barrels that sent servants scrambling and drew the guards' attention. In the chaos, Marcus led Kara through the servants' tunnels, ancient passages that ran beneath the pack house like veins. Alara met them at the eastern exit with a pack of supplies, dried meat, water skins, a cloak that smelled of pine and would help mask Kara's scent. The rogue lands start 5 miles north, Alara said, pressing the pack into Kara's hands. Stay off the main paths. The council there hates pack wolves, but they hate alpha corruption more. If you tell them you're fleeing Randy's territory, they might not kill you immediately. Comforting, Kara muttered, but she gripped Alara's hand tightly. Thank you, all of you. Don't thank us yet, Marcus said. Just survive, and if you figure out how to save that wolf of yours, come back and teach the rest of us hollows how to be dangerous. Kara ran. The forest swallowed her within minutes, thick pine and ancient oak creating a canopy that blocked most of the afternoon light. She moved as quietly as she could, following the silver map still burned into her palm. North, always north. Past the territorial markers, past the patrol routes she'd memorized when she was Luna, into lands she'd only seen on maps. She made it 3 miles before they found her. The howl echoed through the trees, not a hunting call but an execution order. Kara's blood went cold. She recognized that howl. Jace, Soria's personal enforcer, a massive wolf known for his brutality in combat. They weren't planning to bring her back for trial. They were planning to kill her in the forest and claim she'd been attacked by rogues. Kara pushed herself harder, her human body already aching. Without Oralia, she couldn't shift, couldn't access the speed and strength that would have let her outpace her pursuers. She was just human now, soft and slow and vulnerable. Another howl closer, then another from a different direction. They were flanking her, cutting off escape routes. Pack tactics, executed with the precision of wolves who'd hunted together for years. Kara veered east, hopping to lose them in the rocky terrain near the river gorge. But her foot caught on a root and she went down hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. She scrambled up, tasted blood, and saw them. 3 wolves emerged from the shadows. Jace in the center, massive and gray. 2 others she didn't recognize flanking him. Their eyes glowed with predatory focus, and their lips pulled back from fangs designed to tear and rend. "Soria sends her regards," Jace said, his voice rough with the half-shift. "She wanted us to make it look like an accident, but honestly, I prefer honesty." He stalked forward. "You cursed our alpha, you deserve to die screaming." Kara backed up against a tree, her mind racing. She had no weapons, no wolf, no way to fight 3 trained warriors. This was it. She'd failed before even reaching the Moonwell. Then Jace lunged, and something inside Kara snapped. The void in her chest, that empty space where Oralia should have been, suddenly pulled. It was instinct, desperate and uncontrolled, but it worked. Jace's spiritual energy, the bright flame of his wolf, flickered as he passed within arm's reach. He yelped and stumbled, confused by the sudden drain. Kara felt it flow into her, foreign, burning, wrong, but it gave her strength. Just a trickle, just enough to move faster than human. She rolled aside as the second wolf attacked, and again that pull happened. The wolf's energy wavered, and he fell short of his mark. "What is she doing?" one of them snarled. "I can't feel my wolf." "She's feeding," Jace growled, and there was fear in his voice now. "The curse, she's actually feeding on us." They backed away, circling warily. Kara stood there, her hands shaking, small amounts of stolen energy crackling under her skin like lightning. It hurt. Every cell in her body screamed that this was wrong, that she was pulling in something she wasn't meant to contain. But it worked. "You can't track me," Kara realized, the words tumbling out. "That's why you had to use howls and sight. I'm not in the pack mind anymore. To your wolves, I'm invisible." Jace's expression twisted with rage. "Doesn't matter if we can track you if you're dead." They attacked together this time, coordinated. Kara tried to pull energy again, but she was too slow, too inexperienced. Claws raked across her shoulder and she screamed. Blood, hot and real. Pain that drove her to her knees. This was it. She'd failed. Then an arrow sprouted from Jace's shoulder. The wolves scattered as more arrows whistled through the trees. Figures emerged from the forest, not pack wolves, but rogues. Lean and scarred and moving with the casual violence of wolves who'd survived without pack protection. Their leader was a woman with silver-shot black hair and eyes like flint. "You're in neutral territory now," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "And we don't tolerate pack enforcers hunting refugees in our lands." She notched another arrow, aiming at Jace's heart. "Run back to your corrupted alpha and tell him the Rogue Council protects those he throws away." Jace snarled but backed off, his companions following. They melted into the forest, and Kara heard them running south, back toward pack lands. The rogue woman lowered her bow and approached Kara carefully. "You're the Luna who sacrificed her wolf. Word travels fast in the neutral lands." She studied Kara with interest. "You're also the first hollow I've ever seen who can feed on living wolves. That's concerning." "I didn't mean to," Kara gasped, clutching her bleeding shoulder. "I don't know what I did." "You survived. That's what you did." The woman gestured, and 2 other rogues came forward to help Kara stand. "I'm Vera, head of the Southern Rogue Council, and you're headed to the Moonwell, aren't you? I can smell the Pale Keeper's mark on you." Kara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "Then you're crazier than I thought, but brave." Vera smiled, sharp and approving. "We'll take you to the border. Past that, you're on your own. The Moonwell doesn't welcome escorts." They traveled through the night. Vera's rogues, moving silently through territory Kara would have been lost in within minutes. They gave her herbs for the pain, stitched her shoulder with practiced efficiency, and asked no questions about why a former Luna was fleeing into the deep forest. Dawn was breaking when they reached it. The Moonwell sat in a clearing that shouldn't exist, a perfect circle of standing stones surrounding a pool of liquid silver. The air here felt different, thicker, charged with power that made Kara's skin prickle. Ancient trees ringed the clearing, their roots glowing with bioluminescent fungi. "This is as far as we go," Vera said. "The Guardian doesn't like visitors, but he'll see you. The Pale Keeper's mark ensures that." She gripped Kara's uninjured shoulder. "Whatever you learn in there, use it to make Randy regret throwing you away." Then the rogues were gone, melting back into the forest like ghosts. Kara stood at the edge of the clearing, her heart pounding. The Moonwell pulsed with silver light, calling to the empty space inside her. She took a step forward, then another, until she stood at the water's edge. A figure rose from the pool. Not human, not wolf, but something in between. Translucent and ancient, with eyes that held the weight of centuries. The Guardian. "Little Hollow," he said, his voice like wind through bones. "The Pale Keeper sends interesting specimens, but you might be the most desperate yet." "I need to learn to control this," Kara said, gesturing to her chest, to the void inside her. "I need to save my wolf before the corruption consumes her." "The hollow state is a doorway," the Guardian said, circling her slowly. "Most wolves who lose their spirits simply fade, but you're pulling instead of fatting, consuming instead of disappearing. Do you understand what that means?" "No." "It means you've accessed a power older than the moon goddess, older than Pax, older than the first wolves walked on 2 legs and called themselves human." The Guardian's eyes blazed silver. "The void doesn't just exist in you. You're becoming the void, a hunger that can swallow spirits, absorb power, and tear reality itself if you're not careful. Teach me to control it." The Guardian smiled, terrible and beautiful. "Oh, I'll teach you. But know this, the power you're seeking comes with a cost. The more you feed, the more you'll hunger. The more you pull, the harder it will be to stop. You could save your wolf, or you could become something that devours everything it touches." Kara thought of Orlia trapped and suffering, of Randy becoming a monster, of the pack falling to corruption. "I'll pay the cost, just teach me." "Then step into the water," the Guardian said, "and let's see if you're strong enough to survive your own hunger." Kara stepped into the Moonwell, and her training began. The Moonwell's silver water burned like ice and fire simultaneously, but Kara forced herself to remain submerged while the Guardian's voice echoed through her mind, teaching her to shape the void inside her chest into something controllable. Days blurred together in that timeless place, but somewhere beyond the clearing, the world continued turning. And in the pack territory she'd fled, the blood moon drew closer. Randy stood before the full-length mirror in his chambers, adjusting the ceremonial collar that marked him as Alpha. The reflection staring back was barely recognizable, sharper features, eyes that flickered between brown and gold, a presence that made even his beta flinch. He looked powerful. He looked dangerous. He looked like a stranger. "You're ready," Soria said from behind him, her voice smooth as honey. She approached, her hands sliding around his waist with practiced intimacy. "Tomorrow night, under the blood moon, you'll finally have a Luna worthy of your strength." Randy caught her reflection in the mirror, saw the satisfaction in her eyes, and felt nothing. No warmth, no desire, no connection. Just the constant burn of Orlia's power in his veins and something else, something dark and hungry that whispered in the back of his mind during his worst moments. "Have you heard anything from the border patrols?" he asked, pulling away from her touch. "About Kara." Sorya's expression flickered, annoyance quickly masked. Why do you keep asking about her? She's gone. Probably dead in the rogue lands by now, considering how weak she was. She wasn't weak. The words came out sharper than Randy intended. She saved my life. She cursed you with dark magic, Sorya corrected, her tone hardening. Look at yourself, Randy. These power surges, the uncontrolled aggression, killing Thomas during the hunt, all of it started after her ritual. She's poison, and you're better off without her. Randy wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at him. The constant battle to control the power thrashing inside him left little energy for anything else. And Sorya was right about one thing. He was different after Kara's ritual. Stronger, yes, but also wrong in ways he couldn't articulate. The ceremony is tomorrow, Sorya continued, her voice softening to something almost gentle. Once we complete the Luna bond, you'll stabilize. A proper mate connection will ground your wolf, give you the anchor you need. You'll see, everything will be better. She left him alone with those promises hanging in the air, and Randy returned to studying his reflection. Tomorrow, he would take a new Luna. Tomorrow, he would forget about brown eyes and desperate sacrifice, and the way Kara used to look at him like he was worth saving. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. In the corridor outside Randy's chambers, Sorya's gentle expression evaporated the moment the door closed. She moved swiftly through the pack house, descending to the lower levels where the ranking wolves maintained private offices. She knocked twice on a specific door, a pattern, a signal. Elder Miriam answered, her aged face drawn with tension. Is he suspicious? No, he's too corrupted to think clearly. Sorya slipped inside, where 3 other wolves waited, Beta James, still healing from Randy's attack, Commander Drake, head of the border patrol, and Lucia. The pack's master strategist. Tomorrow night, during the ceremony, we move forward as planned. You're certain the poison will work this time? Drake asked, his scarred face skeptical. He survived the nightshade venom once. Because that foolish girl poured her wolf into him, Sorya said dismissively. This time, we're using something different. Thornheart poison, mixed with silver dust. It won't just kill his body, it'll shatter whatever remains of his spirit. No ritual will bring him back from that. Lucia leaned forward, her sharp eyes calculating. And you're certain you can survive the Luna bond long enough to administer the poison? The mating ceremony will link your life forces temporarily. I've been building resistance to Thornheart for months. It'll hurt, but I'll survive. Sorya's smile was cold and confident. By dawn, Randy will be dead, his corrupted power will die with him, and I'll be the grieving Luna who bravely tried to save him but couldn't. The pack will turn to you, Miriam, as Elder Council leader. You'll support my claim to leadership, citing my sacrifice and dedication. And what about the half-blood issue? James asked. Randy's corruption proved that mixing bloodlines weakens the pack. We can't risk another alpha with questionable heritage. Which is why I'll take a proper mate after a suitable mourning period, Sorya assured him. Someone from a pure bloodline, someone strong. Her eyes lingered on Drake, whose expression remained carefully neutral. But first, we eliminate the corrupted alpha and restore stability. Miriam nodded slowly. The pack is dying under Randy's leadership. Good wolves are being injured or killed by his outbursts. The border packs are questioning our strength. If we don't act now, the territory will fall to either internal collapse or external invasion. She looked at each of them in turn. We all agree, this is treason. If we fail, we die. We won't fail, Sorya said. Randy's too weakened by the corruption to fight back effectively. And with Kara gone, there's no one left who cares enough to save him. They dispersed separately, returning to their duties as if the conspiracy didn't exist. Sorya made her way back upstairs, playing the role of devoted lunaticby with practiced ease. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Tomorrow night, she would finally have what she'd wanted since the moment Randy had chosen Kara over her 3 years ago. Power. In his chambers, Randy paced like a caged animal. The power inside him surged and ebbed unpredictably, making his skin feel too tight, his bones ache with the need to shift and run and hunt. But every time he tried to shift fully, the transformation felt wrong. as if there were two wolves fighting for control instead of one. He found himself at the window, staring out at the forest that bordered pack territory. Somewhere out there, Kara was gone, exiled by his own cruelty, by words he'd spoken in the first moments of waking with her power burning in his veins. "You smell like nothing. You are too weak." He'd meant it in that moment, meant it with every fiber of his being, disgusted by the absence where her wolf should have been. But now, in the quiet darkness of his room, Randy let himself remember what came before the ritual. Kara laughing at his terrible jokes. Kara defending Omega wolves in council meetings, insisting they deserved better treatment. Kara staying up all night when he'd been sick with fever, her hand cool on his forehead, her voice steady as she told him stories to keep him awake. Kara carving runes into her own flesh to save him. Randy closed his eyes and reached for the pack mind, that constant connection that let him touch the consciousness of every wolf in his territory. He found Beta James, found the patrol guards, found the Omega servants in the kitchen. But when he reached for Kara, stretching his awareness toward that familiar presence that had been at his side for 2 years. Nothing. Silence, absence, a void where she should have been. Because she was hollow now. Because she'd given up her wolf, given up everything to save him, and he'd thrown it back in her face. "What have I done?" Randy whispered to the empty room. The power inside him surged in response, and for just a moment he felt something that wasn't his own. A presence, golden and familiar and in terrible pain. Aurelia, Kara's wolf, trapped inside him, being slowly consumed by something dark. "Help us," she seemed to whimper. "Please help us." Then the moment passed, and Randy was alone again with his borrowed power and growing horror. He'd taken Kara's wolf, taken her sacrifice, taken everything she was, and now both she and Aurelia were suffering because of him. He had to fix this, had to find Kara, apologize, figure out how to give back what he'd stolen. Tomorrow night he was supposed to bond with Soria, but that felt wrong now. Everything felt wrong. Randy strode to his door, intending to postpone the ceremony, to send search parties for Kara, to do something, anything. That wasn't passively waiting for a bonding that would only make things worse. But when he tried to open the door, his hand wouldn't cooperate. His body moved sluggishly, as if fighting through water. The dark thing inside him, the corruption that had been growing since he'd woken with Aurelia's power, stirred and pushed back. "No," it seemed to whisper. "The ceremony continues. The bond will give us another spirit to feed on. More power, more strength." Randy fought it, pushing against the wrongness in his own mind. But he was so tired. The constant battle to control the surges, to keep from hurting his pack, to maintain even a semblance of leadership, it had drained him. And this thing inside him, this corruption, it was patient. It could wait. It could let him think he was in control while slowly, inexorably taking over. His hand fell away from the door. His feet carried him back to bed. And as he lay there, staring at the ceiling, Randy felt the last pieces of his autonomy slipping away. "I'm sorry, Kara," he thought desperately, hoping somehow she might hear him even through the silence. "I'm so sorry." But Kara was far away, submerged in silver water, learning to weaponize the void he'd created inside her. And tomorrow night, while Randy stood at the altar with a Luna who planned to murder him, Kara would be racing back through the forest, carrying power she barely understood, and a desperate hope that she wasn't too late to save the wolf she'd sacrificed, or the man she'd once loved. In the shadows of the pack house, Soria smiled and prepared her poison. The blood moon was rising, and everything was about to burn. The first wolf collapsed during morning patrol. Finn was there when it happened, watching from his position in the kitchen gardens as the warrior. A strong beta named Claire stumbled mid-stride and fell to her knees. Black veins crawled up her neck like living things, spreading from her chest outward. She screamed, a sound of pure agony that brought wolves running from all directions. By noon, there were 7 more. By sunset, 20. The pack healer, an elderly woman named Sage, worked frantically to identify the cause. She examined blood samples, tested for known toxins, consulted every medical text in the archives. Finally, as the moon rose over a pack house filled with screaming, she delivered her findings to the emergency council meeting with hands that shook. "It's spreading through the pack mind," she said, her voice barely audible over the chaos outside. "The corruption that's been consuming the alpha, it's using our mental connection to infect others. Every wolf linked to the pack consciousness is vulnerable." The council chamber went deathly silent. "That's impossible," Beta James said finally. "The pack mind is sacred. It's what makes us pack, what binds us together. It can't be weaponized." "I didn't say it was being weaponized. I said it's being used as a transmission vector." Sage's expression was grim. "Whatever darkness is inside Alpha Randy, it's learning, evolving. It started as a simple corruption of his wolf spirit, but now it's reached out through his alpha connection to the pack mind and—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "It's treating us like a virus treats a body, spreading cell by cell, wolf by wolf, until everyone is consumed." Alara stood in the back of the chamber, having been called to serve refreshments that no one was drinking. She watched the council members' faces drain of color, watched Sorya's expression flicker between genuine fear and calculating opportunity. "How do we stop it?" Commander Drake demanded. "Sever the Alpha's connection to the pack mind," Sage said. "It's the only way to stop the spread, but doing so would require—" "Killing him," Sorya finished, her voice soft. "You're saying we have to kill Randy to save the pack. Or find a way to purge the corruption from his system entirely. But I don't know how to do that. The texts about nightshade venom and void corruption are fragmentary at best, and none of them mention a cure. Because there wasn't one, not in the traditional sense. Alara had heard enough from Kara before she fled to understand that much. The only way to save Randy was to remove Orlaya's spirit, which would kill him. And the only person who might know how to remove a corrupted spirit without destroying the host was the woman Randy had cast aside like garbage. A wolf burst into the chamber, wild-eyed and panting. "The Omega quarters, the corruptions hit there hard. 8 wolves down, maybe more, and some of the infected are turning violent. They're attacking anyone who gets close." Panic rippled through the council. Wolves who'd maintained composure for the healer's diagnosis now showed their fear openly. This wasn't a political crisis or a border dispute. This was an existential threat to everything they were. "We need to evacuate the healthy wolves," Drake said, already moving toward the door. "Set up a perimeter, contain the infected." "No," Randy's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He stood in the doorway, and Alara's breath caught. He looked terrible, gaunt, the black veins visible on his neck and hands, his eyes flickering between brown and gold and something darker. But there was clarity there too, a desperate lucidity that hadn't been present in weeks. "No evacuations, no containing the infected." Randy moved into the room, and wolves instinctively backed away from him. "This is my fault, my corruption. I won't let you turn pack members into prisoners because of what I've become." "Then what do you suggest?" Sorya's voice held carefully modulated concern. "We let the corruption spread until everyone is dead." Randy flinched. "There has to be another way. The ritual Kara's ritual was supposed to cure me. If we can figure out what went wrong, maybe we can reverse it." "Kara's not here," James said flatly. "She fled into rogue territory 2 weeks ago. Even if we wanted her help, we'd never find her in time." "Then we send search parties. We offer her anything, full restoration of her Luna status, public apology, whatever she wants." "She's hollow," Sorya interrupted, her voice sharp. "Even if we found her, what could she possibly do? She has no wolf, no power, no connection to the pack mind that's spreading the corruption. She's useless." Randy's hand shot out and caught Sorya's throat before anyone could react. He lifted her off the ground, his eyes blazing pure gold, and for a moment Alara thought he would kill her right there. Then, with visible effort, he released her and stepped back. "Don't," he said, his voice rough. "Speak about her like that, not ever again." Sorya gasped for air, genuine shock on her face. Whatever control she'd thought she had over Randy had just evaporated. The council watched in tense silence. "I need Marcus," Randy said, turning to address the room at large. "Where is he?" "The Omega kitchen worker," Miriam asked, confused. Why would you need? Because he was friends with Kara, because he helped her escape and he might know where she went. Randy's desperation was palpable now. Get him, now. They brought Marcus up 20 minutes later, the scarred Hollow looking terrified to be standing before the Alpha and Council. Randy approached him carefully, and Alara saw something in his expression she'd never witnessed before, genuine humility. You helped Kara leave, Randy said. It wasn't a question. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Yes. Do you know where she went? A pause. Marcus glanced at Alara, who gave a tiny nod. North, into the deep forest. She was looking for something called the Moonwell. Hope flared in Randy's eyes. Can you find her? Maybe, if she's still there, if she's still alive. Marcus crossed his arms. Why should I help you? You destroyed her, threw her away like she meant nothing. Because I was wrong. The words seemed to cost Randy everything. Because she saved my life and I repaid her with cruelty. Because the wolf spirit she gave me, Aurelia, is trapped inside me, suffering, and I can hear her screaming every night. Because this corruption is killing my pack and Kara is the only person who might know how to stop it. He stopped, his voice breaking. Because I love her, and I was too stupid and arrogant to realize it until it was too late. The confession hung in the air. Soria's expression went carefully blank. The council members exchanged glances. Marcus studied Randy for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll find her, but I'm not making any promises that she'll come back. You burned that bridge pretty thoroughly. Just tell her, Randy stopped, searching for words. Tell her I understand if she wants me to die. Tell her I understand if she never wants to see me again. But tell her the pack is dying. Tell her there are innocent wolves, omegas, children, elders, who had nothing to do with how I treated her, and they're suffering because of my mistakes. If she has even a shred of mercy left, ask her to help them. And what will you offer her in return? Anything, everything, my life if that's what it takes. Marcus left within the hour, carrying supplies and one of the fastest horses from the pack stables. Alara watched him go, hopping desperately that Kara was alive, that she'd learned something at the Moonwell, that she'd be willing to come back to save a pack that had turned its back on her. The days that followed were a nightmare. The corruption spread faster, jumping through the pack mind like wildfire. Wolves turned violent, attacking family members and friends. Some fled into the forest, breaking their pack bonds and becoming rogues rather than risk infection. Others barricaded themselves in their homes, trying to avoid contact with anyone who might be corrupted. Soria's conspiracy adapted quickly. With Randy weakened and the pack in chaos, she positioned herself as the voice of stability. She organized the quarantine efforts, managed food distribution, and quietly reminded key wolves that the bonding ceremony, now postponed indefinitely, might have prevented all of this if it had happened on schedule. Randy barely left his chambers. The corruption was consuming him faster now that it had spread to others, as if their combined suffering fed it. He could hear Aurelia constantly now, her whimpers and pleas for help a background chorus to his every waking moment. And beneath her voice, something else, something ancient and hungry that whispered promises of power if he would only stop fighting and give in. Marcus returned on the 7th day. He came alone, riding hard, and went straight to Randy's chambers. Alara, who'd been bringing the Alpha his barely touched meals, was there when Marcus delivered his message. I found her, Marcus said without preamble. She's alive. She's been training at the Moonwell with some kind of ancient guardian spirit, and he paused, his expression complicated. She's different, powerful. The hollow state, she's learned to weaponize it somehow. I watched her absorb energy from the environment, saw her create shields made of pure void. It was terrifying and beautiful. Will she come? Randy asked, barely breathing. Marcus shook his head slowly. I gave her your message, told her about the corruption spreading, about the pack dying, about you begging for her help. I told her you said you loved her. And she said, tell him I hope he finds someone strong enough to stand beside him. Marcus's voice was flat, delivering the words exactly as Kara had spoken them. Then she turned her back on me and walked back into the Moonwell. She's not coming, Randy. You destroyed her and she's not coming back to save you. Randy sank into his chair. the last hope draining from his face. Around them, wolves screamed as the corruption continued its relentless spread. And in the moonwell, Kara stood waist-deep in silver water, her hands glowing with void energy, preparing for a journey that had nothing to do with saving Randy and everything to do with saving the wolf spirit he'd stolen from her. The blood moon rose like a wound in the sky, casting everything in crimson light that made the corruption's black veins look like cracks in reality itself. The ceremonial clearing was packed with wolves, those still healthy enough to stand, desperate for any solution that might save them. The infected were kept at the edges, restrained but present, their labored breathing a constant reminder of what awaited everyone if this didn't work. Randy stood at the altar, barely upright. The ceremonial robes hung loose on his frame, and the golden collar of alpha authority seemed to weigh him down rather than elevate him. Beside him, Sorya wore white, the traditional color for a Luna claiming her bond. She looked radiant, powerful, everything a Luna should be. She also had poison concealed in the ceremonial wine they would share. "Brothers and sisters," Elder Miriam began, her voice carrying across the clearing. "Tonight, under the blood moon's witness, we join our Alpha to his Luna. May their bond bring stability to our pack and healing to our land." The words rang hollow. Half the wolves present were infected, their eyes reflecting the same golden-black corruption that consumed Randy. The other half watched with desperate hope that a Luna bond might somehow miraculously cure what every healer had declared incurable. Randy barely heard the ceremony. His attention kept drifting to the forest's edge, hopping against hope that Marcus had been wrong, that Kara might appear at the last moment like in the old stories. But the trees remained empty, and Sorya's hand was warm in his as Miriam continued the ancient rites. "Do you, Sorya Vane, accept this bond? Do you pledge your life, your strength, your wolf to this Alpha and his pack?" "I do." Sorya's voice was clear and strong. Underneath her composed exterior, her heart raced with anticipation. Minutes now, just minutes until she could claim everything she'd worked for. "And do you, Randy, son of Lydia and—" Miriam hesitated, the traditional words catching in her throat. Everyone knew now that Randy's father wasn't the deceased Alpha Marcus, but something else. Something that had visited his mother in dreams. "Do you accept this bond? Do you pledge your life, your strength, your wolf to this Luna and your pack?" Randy opened his mouth to respond, and Aurelia screamed inside his chest. The sound was soundless, spiritual, heard only by him, but it was so desperate, so full of agony that he staggered. The corruption surged in response, black veins racing up his neck, and for a moment his eyes went completely dark. He gasped, fighting for control. Thunder cracked across the clear sky. Every wolf in the clearing turned toward the forest as a presence entered the ceremonial grounds. Not walking, manifesting, as if reality itself bent to allow her passage. The air pressure changed, making ears pop and wolves whine nervously. Kara stepped into the crimson moonlight, and she was transformed. Her hair moved as if in an invisible wind, and her eyes, those brown eyes that had looked at Randy with such love, now held depths that made even the elders step back instinctively. Around her body, the air shimmered with void energy, visible as distortions in space where she'd learned to channel the hollow inside her. She wore simple traveling clothes, but power radiated from her in waves that made the spiritual energy in the clearing ripple and flex. She looked at Randy, and her expression was unreadable. "Kara," he breathed, hope and horror warring in his chest. "You came." "Not for you." Her voice was different too, layered, as if speaking from multiple places at once. "I came for Aurelia." Sorya recovered quickly, stepping forward. "How dare you interrupt this ceremony? Guards, remove this cursed." Kara raised one hand, and Sorya's voice cut off as if severed. The void energy around Kara pulsed, and every wolf in the clearing felt it. A pull, a hunger, a presence that could swallow them whole if it wanted to. "The corruption is using the pack mind to spread," Kara said, addressing everyone now. "Every wolf here is connected, which means every wolf here is infected or will be soon. The only way to stop it is to cut out the source." Her eyes fixed on Randy. "Him." No, Saria found her voice again, panic breaking through her careful composure. The Luna bond can stabilize him. Give it a chance to. The Luna bond will give the corruption another spirit to feed on, Kara interrupted. It will accelerate the spread, not stop it. Did you really think marrying him would save anyone? Or did you just want the power before he died? The accusation hung in the air. Soria's face went pale, then flushed with rage. I've done nothing but try to save this pack. While you fled into the wilderness, I stayed. I organized, I planned to kill him. Kara's words were flat, certain. You have Thornheart poison mixed with silver dust in that ceremonial wine, enough to shatter his spirit and claim leadership for yourself. The clearing erupted in chaos. Wolves shouted accusations, denials. Elder Miriam grabbed for the wine cup, and Soria lunged to stop her. In the confusion, Drake and 3 other high-ranking wolves moved toward Randy with weapons drawn, the conspiracy exposed. They had nothing left to lose. Traitors! Beta James roared, intercepting Drake's blade. Wolves collided, the ceremony dissolving into violence as Soria's faction revealed themselves and attacked. Randy stood frozen at the center of the chaos, overwhelmed. The corruption surged inside him, fed by the violence and fear permeating the clearing. He felt his control slipping, felt Orelia's consciousness flickering like a candle in a hurricane, felt something else rising to take control. Let me out, the void corruption whispered. Let me show them real power. No, Randy gasped, fighting it. I won't, I can't. But his body was already changing. The transformation that rippled through him was wrong in every way a shift could be wrong. Bones broke and reformed incorrectly. Muscle and fur erupted in patches, neither human nor wolf but some twisted hybrid. His face elongated into a snout filled with too many teeth, and his hands became claws that could rend steel. The golden power of Orelia's spirit burst outward, but it was corrupted now, streaked with black that pulsed and writhed like living shadow. The monster that had been Randy threw back its head and howled, and the sound shattered windows in the pack house half a mile away. Wolves scattered in terror. The fighters, both Soria's conspirators and Randy's loyalists, froze as the creature turned its attention on them. It moved with terrible speed, crossing the clearing in 2 bounds. Drake died first, torn apart so fast he barely had time to scream. Then Lucia, crushed beneath claws that pulverized bone. Randy, stop, Soria screamed, all pretense of control gone. It's me, it's... The creature's head swiveled toward her with predatory focus. It didn't recognize her, didn't recognize anyone. There was nothing human left in those eyes, just hunger and corruption and Orelia's agonized consciousness trapped in the center of it all. Kara moved. She was suddenly between Soria and the creature, void energy crackling around her hands. The monster lunged, and Kara caught it, actually caught it, her power forming a shield that absorbed the impact. The clearing's spiritual energy warped around them, reality bending under the strain. Orelia, Kara said, her voice penetrating the creature's roar. I know you're in there. I know you can hear me. The monster thrashed, trying to break through her shield. But Kara held firm, and slowly, impossibly, she pushed deeper. Not physically, spiritually. Her void power reached into the creature's chest, into the space where Orelia's spirit was trapped and corrupted. And she saw her. Her beautiful golden wolf, diminished and twisted by months of torture. Orelia's form was barely recognizable, more black veins than gold light now. But her eyes, those were still the same. Still Orelia. Still the wolf who had whispered, I love you, before sacrificing herself. Please, Orelia's consciousness begged without words. Please, end this, I can't. I can't hold it back anymore. It's eating everything I am. Tears streamed down Kara's face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I did this to you. You saved him, loved him. That's what we do. Orelia's presence flickered, fighting to maintain coherence. Now save me. Let me go. Let me rest. Around them, the pack watched in terrified silence as Kara and the monster remained locked in their spiritual confrontation. Some wolves wept. Others prayed. All of them understood they were witnessing something that would define their pack for generations, if any of them survived to remember it. Kara looked up at the creature's face, saw Randy somewhere deep inside, screaming. Saw the corruption that would consume everyone if she didn't act. Saw the impossible choice laid bare before her. Save Randy and let the corruption spread. Or save Orlaia and everyone else and let Randy die. There was no middle ground, no clever solution. Just a choice between the man she'd once loved and the wolf who'd been part of her soul. "I'm sorry," Kara whispered to both of them. "I'm so sorry." Then she pulled. The void inside her opened fully, becoming a hunger vast enough to swallow stars. Kara channeled every lesson the Guardian had taught her, every hour of training in the Moonwell's silver water. She reached into the creature's chest and wrapped her power around Orlaia's corrupted spirit like hands around a dying flame. And she ripped it free. Orlaia came out screaming. A golden streak of light shot through with black corruption. Kara caught her in the void, feeling her wolf's essence pour into the empty space where she'd once lived. But this wasn't a reunion, it was a mercy killing. Orlaia was too corrupted to survive, too damaged to heal. The moment she left Randy's body, she began to dissolve. "Thank you," Orlaia's final thought echoed through Kara's mind. "Thank you for loving us enough to let us go." The golden light scattered across the clearing like stars falling, each mote purifying a small section of corrupted ground. The pack watched in awe as Orlaia's spirit, freed at last, dissipated into the night sky. And Randy, the creature, collapsed. The corruption that had held him together, that had fed on Orlaia's power for months, suddenly had nothing to sustain it. Black smoke poured from his body as the void presence fled, seeking another host. But Kara was ready. She opened her void wider and swallowed the darkness, pulling it into herself where it couldn't escape. It fought, gods, how it fought. The corruption thrashed inside her, trying to take root, trying to corrupt her like it had corrupted Randy. But Kara wasn't a normal wolf. She was hollow, empty space that could contain anything, even ancient evil. And she'd learned to compress that space, to crush and destroy what she held inside. The corruption screamed as Kara's void collapsed around it, grinding it to nothing. When she finally released her power, the clearing was silent. The infected wolves stood blinking, the black veins fatting from their skin. The pack mind, cleansed of corruption, hummed with cautious relief. And at Kara's feet, Randy lay naked and human and dying, the borrowed power that had kept him alive for months now gone forever. Randy's eyes fluttered closed for the final time as the nightshade venom claimed him. His last breath escaped with Kara's name on his lips, but she was already gone, disappearing into the forest with her outcasts. Beta James found the Alpha's body minutes later, cold and lifeless on the ceremonial ground. The pack that had once feared Randy's power now stared at his corpse with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Elder Miriam took temporary leadership, her first act a solemn decree. Let it be known that Alpha Randy died as he lived, alone, a cautionary tale of what happens when power matters more than the people who give it meaning. Soria was never seen again. Some said she fled to distant territories, others whispered she'd been killed by her own conspirators when the plot failed. Either way, her name became synonymous with treachery, spoken only as a warning to ambitious wolves who valued power over integrity. The pack slowly rebuilt under new leadership. Beta James, who'd remained loyal even when Randy had broken his ribs, and a council of equals rather than a single alpha. They erected no monument to Randy. No songs were sung of his reign. Instead, they planted a garden where he'd died, letting new life grow from the ground his corruption had poisoned. But in the north, beyond the Moonwell, beyond the rogue territories, Kara's legend grew. 6 months after her departure, her pack had swelled to 50 wolves, all outcasts, all hollows, all those deemed too weak or broken by traditional pack standards. They called themselves the Silver Moon Pack, and their territory became a sanctuary for any wolf fleeing abuse, corruption, or the rigid hierarchies of the old ways. Kara stood in the central clearing of her new home, watching her pack train. Marcus was teaching tracking techniques that didn't require wolf senses. Alara was showing younger wolves how to use consciousness projection for scouting. Finn demonstrated his partial shift combat style, his human hands sprouting claws while his legs remained bipedal, giving him advantages traditional full-shift wolves couldn't match. And Luna, her silver wolf spirit, hummed contentedly in her chest, a constant companion that was truly hers. Not borrowed, not sacrificed, not stolen. Earned through survival and strength and the courage to choose herself when the world demanded she keep giving pieces away. A young she-wolf approached hesitantly. She'd arrived 2 weeks ago, fleeing a pack where her alpha had rejected her for being defective, born unable to fully shift, just like Finn. Her name was Sierra, and she still flinched when people moved too quickly. Luna Kara, Sierra's voice was small. I wanted to thank you for letting me stay, for not seeing me as broken. Kara smiled and touched the girl's shoulder gently. You're not broken, Sierra, you're different, and different isn't weakness, it's possibility. She gestured to the pack training around them. Every wolf here was told they were too weak to matter, and look at us now. We're thriving, building something the traditional packs can't even imagine. Do you ever miss it? Sierra asked. Your old pack, being Luna to a powerful alpha. Kara was quiet for a moment, considering. I miss who I thought Randy was. I miss Aurelia every single day. But the pack, the hierarchy, being valued only for what I could sacrifice rather than who I am. She shook her head firmly. No, I don't miss that at all. That night, as the full moon rose silver and bright, Kara stood on her cliff overlooking the territory. Behind her, the pack gathered for their monthly howl, not a show of submission to an alpha, but a celebration of survival, of community, of choosing to build rather than destroy. Marcus joined her at the cliff's edge. You know they're telling stories about you in the southern territories, the Luna who absorbed corruption itself and lived, the Hollow who became more powerful than any wolf with a spirit. They're calling you a legend. Let them call me whatever they want, Kara said. I know who I am, and that's enough. What about Randy? Marcus asked carefully. Do you ever wonder if you made the right choice, letting him die? Kara looked at the moon, remembering the boy who'd saved her from rogues, the man who'd promised her forever, the alpha who'd thrown it all away the moment she became inconvenient. Randy made his choice when he rejected me for being too weak. I just returned the favor. He wanted strength beside him. She smiled, cold and cert. Well, he died strong, alone, exactly as he chose. Marcus nodded slowly. And Aurelia? Lives on. Kara pressed her hand to her chest, where Luna pulsed with silver light. Not the way she was, but her sacrifice, her love, it's woven into everything we've built here. Every outcast we save, every hollow who learns they're not broken, that's Aurelia's legacy. That's what her sacrifice actually meant. The pack's howl rose behind them, 50 voices singing in harmony. Not submission, not dominance, just joy, just being. And in that moment, Kara understood that this family she'd built from broken pieces, this territory claimed through courage rather than conquest, this life she'd chosen for herself, this was what strength actually looked like. Not power over others, but power with them. Not forcing others to sacrifice for you, but choosing what you'll give freely. Not requiring submission, but earning loyalty through respect. She'd been called too weak to stand beside an alpha. So she'd become something better. She'd become herself. Kara threw back her head and joined the howl, Luna's voice joining hers in perfect harmony. The sound carried across the mountains, across the forests, a declaration that echoed all the way to the southern territories where traditional packs still clung to their hierarchies. The message was clear, the old ways were dying, and from their ashes something new, something better was being born. The Luna of the Hollow had risen, and she would never bow again. Years later, historians would mark this as the beginning of the Great Pack Reformation, when the rigid hierarchies started crumbling, when hollows were no longer seen as broken, when sacrifice became a choice rather than an expectation. They would trace it all back to one woman who'd been discarded as too weak and had turned that weakness into revolutionary strength. But Kara didn't think about legacy or history. She thought about the young wolf who'd arrived today, terrified and broken, who would wake up tomorrow in a safe den surrounded by wolves who understood. She thought about Marcus teaching tracking to a class of eager students. She thought about Alara and Finn laughing over a shared meal. She thought about Luna, her silver wolf who purred contentedly in her chest and whispered, "We did it. We survived. We're free." And Kara smiled, because that was the only ending that mattered. Not revenge, not vindication, not even justice. Just freedom, just choice, just the fierce joy of building a life on her own terms. The Luna of the Hollow stood on her cliff, surrounded by her chosen family, and knew with absolute certainty that she would never sacrifice herself for someone else's strength again. She was whole, she was free, she was enough. And that was the best ending of all. Did Kara's transformation give you chills? Subscribe now for more stories where the weak ones become unstoppable. Because sometimes the best revenge is becoming so powerful they regret ever underestimating you. Hit that subscribe button and I will see you in the next story.